Hello and welcome to Smart Tips on Improving Practice Performance. This webinar, offered by CureMD, is about confronting payer clawbacks. Payer clawbacks are those efforts by health plans and other payers to seize money from you, to demand a refund from you for services that you provided and have already been paid. My name is Robert Goff. And in the 46 years that I've been in the healthcare industry, it has been my pleasure to work with physicians on a regular basis regarding issues that confront them. I hope that today's presentation will be helpful in giving you tools and techniques to address this effort by payers to deprive you of funds. Just so that you know, the information presented in this webinar is general information and not meant to substitute for legal advice. Always seek the advice of a competent attorney on legal matters. And if you are going to make a copy of this presentation, and you may find the information helpful, please be aware that it is copyrighted. Just because you've been paid for it does not mean you get to keep the money. What a sad commentary. You've provided services, you billed, you were paid, and sure enough, months later, potentially even years later, you receive a letter from the mail looking for a refund from a payer. This process is known as payer clawbacks, which is a process that the payers use to seek recovery from what they call post-payment audits. And those post-payment audits add up to money coming out of a practice. Overall, physicians lose about 2% of their earned income through these post-payment audits. Now, these audits most often aren't even conducted by the health plan themselves. This is what makes the whole process somewhat insidious. The payers will employ outside commission-based audit firms to mine through the paid claims data and identify alleged overpayments, and then seek recovery from you. Notice that I said alleged overpayments. These companies are using data to identify what they believe is an overpayment. Believe me, they are not spending 1 ounce of time, 1 moment of effort to prove and determine that, in fact, you have been overpaid. It's much easier for them to just demand the money from you and stop there. Remember, it's in the interest of these companies to extract the funds from you. They either get paid by a commission or the contract stays in place if they're successful extracting funds from you. Now, you have the right to protect your income and yourself from these efforts, but you need to act promptly to confront the challenge. Silence means consent. What does that mean? That means if you do nothing, the payer is going to extract the funds from you by taking them out of a future payment. Whether you call that a negative remit, the reality is the money is going to come from you if you do nothing. And when you receive the letter then, you must act promptly. In New York State, like most states, the plans must give you at least 30 days notice of their allegation that they've overpaid you and seek a refund before they take any action. Just 30 days. And those 30 days pass very quickly if people in the office are not paying attention. This means that office staff has to be trained to look at the mail, understand the mail, and then act on it. Taking a letter that can seem confusing and putting it aside to be researched later generally means that no action is going to be taken because other priorities will take over. Now, these letters generally have some common reasons why they're looking for recovery. Another payer was primary. An overpayment was made in error. They paid more than the fee schedule allowed. They paid twice. Or the patient was not eligible at time of service. These are all reasons that the payers frequently go out and seek money back from you, the practice. Not your fault, but you're expected to take the economic hit. Well, you need to push back. You can't be silent. You can demand your rights, and by doing so, you dispute what their allegation says. And you have the right to do so. The Federal Fair Debt and Collection Practices Act, because this is a collection activity, gives you rights. You have the right to be presented with evidence that, in fact, you owe the money. And the creditor has no right to harass you. You also have protections under the U.S. Postal Code, which prohibits the use of mails to seek funds from another party where proof of them being owed cannot be provided. Disputing will protect your rights. It's also going to delay any recovery of payment if one is actually due. It will give you the information you need to consider their demand without you going through your records to prove that you're right. Why spend the time and effort? There's no need to. And it will increase the cost of doing business for the health plan. Now, along with the letter that you get looking for a refund, it's not uncommon to receive a phone call or even a fax. Your response must be in writing. Only writing protects you. It's very easy for a plan or one of these outside recovery companies to fax you a demand or to make a phone call seeking money or in follow-up to a letter that they sent you. You don't want to spend your time talking to any of these staff of these plans or their collection agency. So you need to train your staff to avoid dealing with this type of communication. If you receive a phone call from a plan or their agent, refuse the call. Just train your staff to tell them that they should put the request in writing and mail it to the office. Don't engage them on the phone. Remember, their goal is to take money from you. People on the phone, especially because they're anonymous, will say anything to get you to agree to send them money. That's their job. Fairness, honesty, truth, those are absent from calls from payers and from their collection agency when it comes to trying to get money back from you. And never offer to your fax number or your email information to make it easy for them. They're going to ask. Remember, they want to make it easy for them to take money from you. If you receive a fax requesting a refund, write refused on it and send it back. And add a little note. The use of this fax for PHI may constitute a violation of HIPAA and is reportable. Fax communication from health plans should always be refused. Remember, when it comes into a fax machine, an important piece of information might actually get thrown out along with the menu from the diner down the road. You don't want to be beholden to a plan who says, oh, we faxed you that information. Push to get everything in writing. Writing forces them to be more specific, protects you from the comments, inappropriate comments on the phone, and increases their cost of doing business. Now, the letters that you receive demanding refunds are often cryptic. Oftentimes, they really don't tell you what's going on. Well, that's somewhat by design and it's somewhat by laziness on part of the collector. What they're trying to do is get the money. They're not trying to explain why they want it. They're not looking to make it easy for you. Well, you need to push back, and you have the right to. The regulations regarding these type of recoveries actually provide that such notices shall state the patient name, service, date, payment amount, proposed adjustment, and a reasonably specific explanation of the proposed adjustment. So in other words, they should be giving you enough information so you understand why they want the refund. In any case, your letter back must state that you dispute their allegation and request the information you need for them to prove to you that in fact they are entitled to a refund. Your letter, which starts off very graciously, I've received your request for a refund. I must advise you that we dispute your allegation that funds are owed to you at this time, pending the receipt of information to in fact prove that you are entitled to such a refund. Very simple declarative statement. Then follow that by a list of documents that you would want to see to have them prove their basis for the refund request. An explanation of their basis for the demand. How about a copy of an agreement that they're authorized to represent the payer? How do you know that this company that you've never heard from is really representing that health plan that you are contracted with? A copy of the original EOB. What did you submit? What did they process it on? A copy of proof that the patient was enrolled in another plan, if they claim that the other plan was primary. After all, they're making the allegation that the patient committed fraud. Where's the proof? And add to it and ask a question of why haven't they filed fraud charges against the patient? They're the ones making the accusation. Ask them for an explanation why it's your responsibility to pursue the patient for this fraud. A copy of the fee schedule, certified that it's effective as of the date of service. After all, it's not unusual for a recovery be demanded for an overpayment based on a new fee schedule that wasn't in place at the time of service. A detailed explanation of how they arrived at the amount they allege to have been paid in error. Their math at times is not good, and I've never found it to be in the physician's favor. You also want to ask for a copy of the canceled check to prove that you actually not only received the check, but cashed it. This is important in every situation. It is not only difficult for them to provide, but it is the proof that you received the payment. And if you haven't received the payment, then their allegation that you have money to pay them back is false. Now, state prompt payment regulations allow them 30 days to investigate a claim prior to payment. It's appropriate to ask them to explain why that isn't applicable. Why should they have more than 30 days to investigate the claim? An explanation of the time lag between when they discovered the error and the demand to you. You know, when a plan discovers this and they sit on the information for a long period of time, they put you at a disadvantage, especially if you're going to have to now try to collect from a patient or another plan. Ask them to explain it to you. Most of them can't. And ask for any other documentation that's going to make it easy for you to make a determination. You don't want to spend your time going through your records. You want them to spend the time going through theirs. And in your response, you want to assert some very strong positions. State that you reserve the right to request that their response be reviewed by the state health commissioner or the attorney general or whatever department licenses the health plan in your state prior to acting on the demand. Remind them, tell them that you are disputing in accordance with your rights under the Federal Collection Practices Act. This is important because that lays out rules that most of these companies don't follow. Remind them that the Act says they can't take any action prior to proof of the legitimacy of their claim. And remind them that the state regulation says they can't unilaterally offset their alleged payment. Also, remind them as well that you're not going to communicate with them in any other way other than in writing. What you're looking to do is to get all the information that you need to make a determination if they're right, act on any of that information to collect your money from the patient or from another source before you're left with sending them money back or having a future claim offset. You do not want to make it easy for them. You want it in writing. Let them prove their case. Now, some plans and their agents will take your dispute letter and they'll just send back a form letter saying that your appeal has been denied. Well, yours is not an appeal. Remember, the word dispute must be prominent and early in the letter. If that happens, take a copy of your original letter and tack on the following as a response. Our response to your demand for a refund is a dispute, not an appeal. A dispute is our right on the Federal Fair Debt Collection Practices Act and must be treated in accordance with the provisions of that law. Your intentional falsification of our response as an appeal is a blatant attempt to deprive us of rights under that law and is now documented. If an appropriate response is not received by this office within the next 15 days, or if any action is taken to our disadvantage, a complaint will be filed with the regulatory authorities. And if the demand is coming from a third party on behalf of the payer, add, as well as the integrity office of the health plan. Remember what these collection organizations are trying to do, whether it's a department of the health plan or an outside company, is to shake you down for money using as little time and effort on their part. They really don't want to be tied up in doing research or dealing with complaints. Many health plans don't like the idea that their collection companies are violating your rights. That's why the threat to the integrity office of the health plan is useful. Now remember that clawbacks of funds is a business line of health plans and these outside collection companies. They may even be asking for money back when they're not legally entitled to them. Years ago, I challenged the woman responsible for recoveries with Oxford Health Plans, which is now a United Healthcare company. And she said, just because New York State regulations say we can't offset the money, that doesn't mean we can't ask for it back. Physicians are expected to know their contract and the regulations. What a statement. What a philosophy. If anything, this confirms why it is imperative that you dispute any effort at a clawback, at a recovery, based on these post-payment audits. How do you know that it's not the health plan just looking to increase their income, reduce their expenses at your expense? Now, the issue of clawbacks has not escaped the regulators, and in New York, as in most states, they have tried to corral the plans into conducting themselves more responsibly. But even so, as Lorraine Furbush of Oxford Health Plan said, that doesn't stop them, doesn't preclude them from asking, even if they can't offset. And they're not going to tell you in such letters that they can't. The letters are going to be designed to make you think that they can. Disputing is critical. In New York, retroactive terminations should always be disputed, even though New York State limits the exposure to 120 days from date of service. So they can't go back years seeking recovery of claims if there was prior authorization, but they will try. Authorizations can't be withdrawn unless the patient is not covered or false information is relied on. The look-back is limited to 2 years from payment. Some states differ, unless there's a suspicion of fraud or abuse. The letters that you receive of a recovery nature are really recovery letters. They're collection letters. It will come, a letter that's a suspicion of fraud or abuse will come from the Special Investigation Unit. These people that send these letters are collectors. The negative remits, or the offsets, as I mentioned before, require at least 30 days prior notice. That is time for a physician dispute, but it means that your office needs to read and pay attention to the mail that they receive. Standing up for your rights and disputing the recovery letters has a little bit of impact on the plan. And it may have a very positive impact on you, especially for those recovery letters that have small dollar amounts. In many cases, the agent or the plan will just abandon their demand from you, and you're not going to hear anything from them after that initial dispute letter, or after that second letter where they try to blow off your dispute as an appeal. And until they give you the information you're looking for and respond, you're not sending money. And your letters showing dispute give you the basis to preclude them from legitimately offsetting your claim. Now, it may be simple that they do provide information that shows that you were overpaid. And if that's the case, then a refund is appropriate. But you should have obtained, at the same time, sufficient information to try to collect from somebody else. If the claim is that another payer is primary, immediately bill the other payer. If they pay you, refund the payment demanded. If not, for whatever reason, their denial means that the plan was wrong, the plan that paid you was primary, and no refund is due. Just send back a copy of the denial letter from the plan you billed. If they're claiming the patient was not eligible, immediately go after the patient. Yes, you should dispute these recoveries in all cases, but start the process. Put the pressure on the patient to either resolve the issue with the payer or to pay you. As I've mentioned before, any dispute will delay the potential refund. Potentially, it will eliminate it. And in any case, your disputing it was unusual for a health plan. Most physicians just accept these recoveries and see the money leave their accounts. Your dispute is different. It either is to be handled, which will increase the costs of the plan, or they will abandon the effort, in which case no refund is due. In the many years of working with physicians, I have found that offices that push back actually experience less refund demands than those that readily send money. Those that send money kind of get a reputation of being easy marks, and as a result, seem to have more demands for refunds than others. So in summary, it's important to remember that clawbacks do hit the physician incomes very directly, on the average 2% or more. Don't let it be a hit to your income. If you do nothing, you will lose, and you'll get a reputation for refunding or allowing the clawbacks. You'll likely get more letters, more demands to return money. Your response to these requests, these demands for refunds, is to dispute them promptly and forcibly. Now, what do you do if you discover you've been overpaid? I don't recommend sending back the money. The reason being is that if you send the money back, the plan generally does not know what to do with it if they didn't ask for it. And your check will circulate around a company with its brown interoffice envelope, and in the meantime, their computers may be sending you a recovery letter. So, cash the check, keep the money aside, and send it back only when they ask for it. Use this for commercial plans. Now, don't do it for Medicare, because you have 60 days under the False Claim Act to return overpayments, and you don't want to mess with Medicare. I hope you found this information helpful, and please dispute those clawbacks.